Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, November 11th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Today is Remembrance Day, so I just wanted to take a moment to recognize all the veterans that have given their lives, for the betterment of the rest of us. We're lucky to be here because many people have lost their lives, especially in World War I and World War II. So obviously I had to mention that because today's a very important day, especially here in Canada. I think we respect the veterans a lot, and in the States too and everything. So definitely want to mention that off the top of the show. Okay, I got a lot to talk about today, guys. UFC Moscow, Bellator 233. I'm going to recap both those cards, a couple pieces of news, and let's get right into it. So UFC Moscow, man, crazy card. A lot of fights that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, especially myself. I did not have a great night of picks. It is what it is. There was a lot of upsets, a lot of fights that I just didn't see playing out the way they did. Let's get right into them. Start with the main event. Zabit Magomedsharipov defeats Calvin Kattar via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Definitely the right call by the judges for sure. I had Zabit winning, I believe it was the first 2 rounds, and I think Kattar came on late. It's too bad the fight was in 5 rounds. I think it was 5. I think Kattar would have had a much better chance to win the fight. I think he probably would have won the fight. So there's a lot to take away from this fight. It was a solid performance by Zabit. I don't think his best performance inside the octagon, but a solid performance over a very tough guy in Calvin Kattar. Is very dangerous. So for him to get the win and extend his UFC win streak to 6 straight fights, I think that says a lot about him. He's likely next in line for a title shot. He asked for a title shot after in his post-fight interview. He said he wants to fight the winner of Volkov and Max Holloway at UFC 245. I think based on his win streak, it probably does make sense that he's going to be next in line. I just wish he was tested in a 5-round fight. That's the only thing I'm worried about here, guys. Like, at least a guy like Yair Rodriguez is tested in 5 rounds. Zabit's not tested. I'm a little bit worried about his cardio going into those 4th and 5th rounds because it seems like in the 3rd round he slows down. Like, don't forget that Kyle Bochniak fight. He slowed down a lot in that 3rd round. So if he goes against a guy like Max Holloway, pours the pressure on those championship rounds, or even Volkanovski, we haven't really seen him go late either, but I have a feeling he'll have good cardio. If he goes against someone like that, he could be in trouble. So the guy's definitely talented. He's a great fighter, no doubt about it. But I just wanted to see him tested in 5 rounds. I'm just a little bit worried about him, especially if he fights Max. I don't like that matchup for him at all. As far as Kattar goes, I expect a little bit more from him. I mean, tough situation, obviously, flying all the way to Russia to take on the guy who ever thought was going to win. So not an easy situation for him. But at the same time, I expect a little bit more from him in this fight based on how he's looked lately. He did win a round, but he didn't win 2 rounds. So he lost the fight pretty cleanly. If you ask me, no controversy there. Drops his UFC record to 4-2. So not a bad record, and he's got some good wins, obviously. Burgos, Lamas, Feely's good wins, but I think he definitely needs to make some improvements in his game. Just be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know what happened to that aggression of the guy that fought Lamas and Fishgold. It just wasn't in this fight, and he really, really needed to be that guy. So he's still a talented guy, still a top 15 guy. Is he a top 10 guy? I don't know. Maybe. Is he a top 5 guy? I don't think so. So there's obviously some good matchups for him out there. Maybe Jeremy Stevens would be a fun fight for Calvin Kattar in his next fight. I think that would be a fun one. Renato Moicano, maybe to rematch, something like that. There's definitely some guys he could fight, but at this moment, I don't really know if he's a top 10 guy. I think he's talented, don't get me wrong, but I just expect a little bit more from him in this fight. He's waited a long time for this opportunity. I just feel like he didn't do everything he could have to win this fight. And I'm sure he's regretting it right now as well. So, overall, it was a good fight. One fight of the night. I'm not 100% sure if it should have won fight of the night, to be completely honest. There were some other fights I thought should have won instead. I'll talk about those in a second. But definitely a good fight, a good main event. I just wish it was 5 rounds. I think with 3 rounds, we didn't learn enough of both guys. It's very unfortunate. All right, get to the co-main event here. Alexander Volkov defeats Greg Hardy, unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. I don't think anyone's surprised about the result of this fight. Volkov, just much more experienced fighter, 30 more fights, and I think that's a huge difference. He looked pretty good in this fight. Looked sharp with his striking. Improves his UFC record to 5-1 with the 1 loss to Derek Lewis. And let's be honest, guys, if that fight went 11 more seconds, he would have won that fight too. So he would be on a 6-fight win streak. He did lose those, so he got knocked out. It is what it is. It happens in the sport. You get knocked out sometimes. He's still a talented guy. Francis Ngannou's calling him out now. I think that fight makes sense. Francis needs to fight. Volkov's the highest ranked guy that he hasn't fought yet that's available. So Francis Ngannou versus Volkov's a fight I'd like to see. The UFC apparently is saving Francis Ngannou for their France debut in 2020. do Volkov versus Ngannou in France, in Europe. Makes a lot of sense as a fight night main event. I'd like to see that fight. I would definitely favor Ngannou, but Volkov's a very dangerous guy and a very technical fighter and a very good striker. So you definitely have to give him a chance to win that fight. As far as Greg Hardy goes, you know what? I mean, listen, like people hate this guy, and I get it. I mean, the guy's passed, obviously, and it's not good. And he's kind of avoided questions about it, avoided giving answers. And the UFC hasn't talked about it. Dana White hasn't talked about it. So I can see why people hate him. But listen, like that was a while ago. This guy is in the UFC now, and he's trying to make a living and trying to make a career for himself in the UFC. And he's fought 5 times this year, which I believe set a record for most heavyweight fights in a year. So even if you hate the guy, and I can totally understand why you would, you got to admit it's kind of impressive the guy's fought 5 times this year. I think it's impressive personally. He had the loss to Alan Crowder, the DQ. That was a fight he might have won. We don't really know how that fight would have played out, but he lost on paper. He had the 2 quick knockout wins over Smolyakov and Adams. And Adams was a guy that a lot of people were talking about as a prospect. Beats his Soli to have the overturn. And then he took on Volkov on like 2 weeks' notice against a top 10 guy in the world. And you know what? At least he went the full 3 rounds. He didn't get knocked out in the first minute. So you got to at least give him credit for that. It wasn't obviously an amazing performance by any means. He got beat to the punch. He got outstruck. He just wasn't as good as Volkov was on the feet, but he did hang in there for 3 rounds. So I got to give Greg Hardy some credit here. Again, I completely understand why people don't like this guy. I completely understand why people want to see him lose. I get that. I just try to look at things objectively as just an MMA fighter, not really their personal life. Sometimes I'm trying to. And in this situation with Greg Hardy, I've said this the whole time he's been in the UFC and even in the Contender Series. He's a very talented guy as far as athleticism goes and just natural MMA ability. He's only 31, so he's still one of the youngest guys in this division, has a lot to work on. But it seems like he's really willing to put that work in and actually try to get better. So I just want to, I got to give the guy some credit here. 5 fights in 1 year. That's somewhat impressive to me, at least. I know a lot of people don't like him. Again, I get that. But 5 fights in 1 year is just something that's never been done before by heavyweight. So that is impressive. All right, let's get to the rest of the card here. Danny Roberts defeats Zelim Namadia via knockout in the second round. Wow, this was crazy. I didn't expect this one. This was just a brutal knockout by Danny Roberts. Saved his job, really, coming off the 2 straight losses to Pereira and Silva, 2 straight stoppage losses. This guy is he's beat, killed, or kill. Either he gets knocked out or he knocks you out, or gets submitted or submits you. His fights are crazy. I mean, he's just a really exciting fighter to watch. This was another crazy fight by him. Gets the knock over Amadiev, who's 0-2 now in the UFC. Amadiev might get cut. Really hasn't lived up to the hype or the record that he had coming in the UFC, but Roberts saves his job. Really good win here. Fun fight. Roberts is a very underrated fighter, I think, as far as putting on exciting fights go. And overall, his record now in the UFC is 6-4. So not a bad record. Much over 500. Like I said, Amadiev 0-2 probably gets cut. Next up, light heavyweight bout. Here's another upset. Ed Herman defeats Kadis Ibrahimov via unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. This, to me, was fight of the night. These guys went to war. These guys literally put their lives on the line in this fight. This was an insane fight. Ed Herman's fights are always good to watch. I love Ed Herman. Been a fan of him ever since The Ultimate Fighter Season 3. He's just he's a guy that's really grown on me over the years. I remember they called him Short Fuse back then. I think they still call him Short Fuse, but he really was the Short Fuse on that show. I remember how upset he'd get and his ginger face would turn red. This guy has really grown on me over the years, guys. Like, he is an exciting guy to watch. He's had some really memorable fights in the UFC. That fight with Trevor Smith back in 2013, that was an amazing fight. This fight was really good too. It's an Ed Herman fight. He put the guy against the fence, dirty boxed him, used his chin to survive big shots. Guy's tough as nails, man. 39 years old, 2-fight win streak. Beat Patrick Cummins, beat Kadis Ibrahimov, both as an underdog. So very impressive 2019 here for Ed Herman, who saves his job once again in the UFC. It's amazing what he's doing. 13 years after making his debut in the UFC, he's still winning fights. And I actually looked through the Ultimate Fighters, the first 4 seasons. The 5th season actually has a few guys still in the UFC, like Joe Lozon, Nate Diaz. There are a few guys from that season still fighting. But the first 4 seasons, other than Diego Sanchez, whose contract status is kind of like up in the air right now, he might be doing Lethway. Ed Herman's the only guy from the first 4 seasons currently under contract and fighting on the UFC roster. That is absolutely amazing. The guy's longevity is something to marvel about. It's incredible, really. And he's super durable. He's just a fun guy to watch. Very impressive performance here by Ed Herman. I love this fight. I thought it was fight of the night. I think these guys should have got a bonus award for their fight because they went to war, and it was a really fun fight. For Kadis Ibrahimov, 2 straight losses now in the UFC, Both fights taken on short notice, so you got to give the guy credit. I think you give him one more fight because he is a young guy and he's, I think, improving a little bit. But he lost his fight, and he was favored to win and he lost. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did get cut. I just think that there is some potential here to possibly give him one more fight. Next up, welterweight bout, Anthony Rocco Martin defeats Ramazan Emeev via unanimous decision, 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. Really good performance here by Rocco. Another upset here. A lot of upsets on this card. He looked good in this fight, man. He did look good. He's looked really good since moving to welterweight 5-1. The one loss to Damian Maia by majority decision. Looked solid in this fight. Pretty much beat Emeev to the punch, out-wrestled him. Just impressive as hell for Emeev. I mean, that snaps a nice win streak for him, so that's not a good way to lose. He had a 7-fight win streak coming in this one, but hey, he got beat to the punch and he lost fair and square, and these guys seem to have a lot of respect for each other, and I got to give Anthony Rocco Martin a lot of credit here for that post-fight interview. One of the best post-fight interviews, I think, ever in the UFC. He said that, you know what? I think I have the quote on my – I'm going to pull the quote out right now. It's on my Twitter. He said, this woman, I never tell her how much I love her and how much she means to me. She just got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. She means the world to me. I just want to tell her how much I love her. Mom, I love you. That's all he needed to say. It was an incredible post-fight interview. One of the best I've ever heard. And, I hope his mom feels better. I mean, that's obviously that's not good, stage 4 breast cancer, of course. So very sad stuff there for the Rocco Martin family. I hope, like I said, my best wishes to his family, but, that's very sad stuff. So great performance by him. He's a top 15 guy, arguably at welterweight, and I'm looking forward to seeing who he fights next. There's a lot of good options for him at 170. And finally, in the main card, Shamil Gabzatov defeats Clinton Abreu via split decision, 28-29, 29-28, 29-28. Terrible fight, just really bad fight by these two guys, just sloppy and just uneventful. And these guys just didn't look like they cared that much. I think Clinton Abreu's 1-2 now in the UFC, probably gets cut, maybe get more in fight. Listen, a lot of people thought he won the fight. I get that, but I would never get up in arms about a fight like this where it's just such a terrible fight. And really, both guys lost, in my opinion. Just an awful fight. Gabzatov, he picks up the win. He improves to 14-0, but this guy clearly is a flawed fighter. And looking forward to his career, I would be looking to fade him against anyone with a decent amount of talent at 205 pounds, including the next guy I'm going to talk about here. Magomedsharipov defeats Dalka Luminbula via knockout in the third round with a front kick. Amazing knockout by this guy. I picked against him on the podcast, and obviously it was a bad pick. There was upsets on this card. This wasn't one of them. This was pretty much a blowout. Dalka just wasn't at the same level as Magomed. Magomed looked amazing in this fight. He is now 3-1 in the UFC. The Paul Craig fight, I still can't get that out of my mind, the way he tapped 1 second left. But at the same time, it was a fight he was winning up until the end. And overall, since then, he's looked incredible. So this guy is a very dangerous guy, 205 pounds, 27 years old. Definitely someone to watch out for at 205. I'm still a little bit worried about him going forward against someone with submission prowess, but you know what? This guy is super dangerous. His striking is amazing, and this was a great win for him. He picks up a bonus for performance of the night, well-deserved. Next up, Rustin Habilov defeats Sergey Kondasko via unanimous decision, 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. Another boring fight. Habilov just basically held Kondasko against the fence for 3 rounds. Very, very bad fight. Just a boring fight. He gets the win. I get it. He needed to get the job done. He was coming off the loss of Ferreira. And that's a good win for him in his welterweight debut, but it wasn't a good fight. Next up, this was an incredible performance here. Carl Robertson defeats Roman Kopylov via third-round submission with the rear naked choke. Amazing performance here by Robertson. Okay, so he pretty much dominated the whole fight, and he looked really good in this fight. But what impressed me was he got poked really bad in the third round. His eye was bleeding, and the doctor let him go on. And that's the one problem I have with the sport, is just the inconsistencies between the different commissions and the doctors and the referees. And I get it, it's just human nature, but you look at the Nate Diaz fight, they stopped that, and then the Robertson, he's literally bleeding out of his eye, and he said, I cannot see, and they still let him fight, which is crazy to me. He was talking in the post-fight interview, Dan Hardy said, I couldn't see anything, but I just wanted to keep fighting. So credit to this guy for going the full distance, basically, and then getting this finished late with one eye. That was amazing stuff to watch. So incredible performance by Robertson. I think he should have won a bonus. I think when you get poked in the eye like that, you can only see with one eye and you still get the finish. You should get some bonus money, but it is what it is. The next guy got a bonus instead. David Zawada picks up a huge upset here over Abubakar Nurmagomedov with a triangle choke in the first round. Another guy saving his UFC job. He had 2 straight losses in his first 2 UFC fights. He needed this win. He gets it over Nurmagomedov, who he's lost a few times now by submission. And you know what? Listen, I think this guy is definitely talented, but The betting line was pretty much out of hand for this fight when you think about it, because like this guy wasn't super impressive in PFL. He went 1-1 and 1, and he had that one huge upset loss to Pavel Kush, and even the Bojan Velikovic fight. Like that's a fight that he really should have dominated, and he had a draw in that one. So this guy isn't as great as we all thought he was going in. He's definitely not Khabib. He shares the same last name, but he's not Khabib. So Zawada gets the win, saving his job. Abubakar will obviously get another fight, but hold your horses with this guy. He's definitely not as good as his cousin. Next up, Roosevelt Roberts defeats Alexander Yakovlev, unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Pulled out a solid win here. A very close fight for sure, but at the end, Roberts got the takedown in the third round, and it won him the fight. So good for him to get back on the win track, and Yakovlev obviously picks up the loss there. Next up, Pannie Kianzad defeats Jessica Rose Clark in a rematch, 30-27 across the board. Her striking looked really good. Her boxing looked much improved in this fight. Clark picks up another loss. So she's 2-2 now in the UFC. Kianzad's 1-2, saves her job. Clark obviously will probably be fighting for her job in her next fight. And finally, Davey Grant defeats Grigory Popov via split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. Overall, a pretty close fight for sure. I think I scored it for Grant. I can't remember now, but it was close, and I think it could have went either way personally. But overall, a pretty solid fight. So overall, I think it was a pretty good card. You know, a lot of upsets, a lot of fights that I don't think a lot of us saw coming, but it was definitely a solid card. And move on to the next one. Okay, so I want to talk about Bellator 233 now. Bellator 233, another card with some interesting results. Main event evening, middleweight bout. John Salter defeats Costello Vanstinas, 29-28 across the board. Good performance by Salter for 2 rounds. Third round was all survival mode. Managed to survive Vanstinas' attack. So good for Salter for doing that. Man, he got busted up really bad in this fight, but still pull off the win. So good for Salter, a very underrated guy at 185 pounds. He has won 9 of his last 10 fights. So this guy is a very impressive fighter, very close to probably getting another title shot and a rematch with Rafael Navarro Jr. This was a really good performance by him. I was very impressed. And for Vanstinas, he came on strong in the third. It just wasn't enough. You got to put together at least 2 rounds out of the 3 to get the win. And the guy's still a good prospect, but clearly needs to work on his wrestling and his ground game. Next up, a big upset here. Andrew Capel defeats King Mo via knockout in the first round. King Mo retires, 4 straight knockout losses. You know, he had a solid career. John McCarthy was calling him a legend in the sport. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, the guy's had a good career, 21-10 and 1 no contest. Legend seems like kind of a stretch. He was a Strikeforce flyweight champion, but like heavyweight champion, but he was never a champion in Bellator. He did win some tournaments, never won, or he got to the finals of the tournaments, never won the title. He did win. I guess he won the Rising tournament. So you know what? The guy had a really good career. He fought a lot of tough fights. I don't think he ever had an easy fight in his whole career. You know, so King Mo had a really solid career overall. I don't know if he's legend status. I think that's a stretch, but the guy had a solid career and finished his career with 4 straight knockout losses. He's done. He'll never fight again, I hope. And 38 years old, I think that's it for him. But, you know, coaching is a good thing for him. And he's a very smart guy. I think a podcast would be good for him, or some commentary or something like that. Maybe he works for Bellator in the future. So, unfortunately, you know, his career ends with all those knockout losses, but at least he knew when to hang the gloves up. And for Capel, what a huge win for this guy. You know, he's been busting his ass in the regional scene for a long time, comes to Bellator, first big show opportunity, and gets the win over King Mo. So good for him. Also on the card, women's featherweight belt, Arlene Blencow defeats Leslie Smith, 30-27 across the board. Pretty close fight here. Really could have went either way. Couldn't have went either way. Blencow definitely won. Leslie Smith thought it could have went either way. She had her hand up at the end. She believed she won the fight, but let's be honest, Blencow won this fight. Busted up Smith's face really good. Really wasn't that close a fight. At least it wasn't as close as Leslie Smith seemed to indicate it was, and Blencow wins as a dog. And finally, Terrell Fortune defeats Duane Ngannou via TKO in the first round. I don't think anyone was surprised about that one. That was a blowout fight. He was like minus 800 favorite, and for a reason. And just on the prelims here, we had Logan Storley defeat EJ Brooks in the catchweight. Kyle Crocker defeated Robert Goodwin in the catchweight. Amanda Bell defeated Janie Hardway. Julius Inglickus from the Contender Series defeated Jordan Young. And this guy, Aaron McKenzie, who's all over Reddit, he won his fight in the second round by submission over Sean Clements. So, you know, a few good fights here on this card, but it's one of those Bellator fight night cards, I guess you can call them. There is a Bellator card this week, guys. Just to keep that in mind. It's on Thursday, which is really weird, but it's going to be taped late, I think, until Friday. So definitely keep an eye on that one. Sergey Karatanov takes on Linton Vassell. Also, Austin Vanderford's on the card. Roger Huerta, Haim Gonzalez. So some interesting fights on that card. All right, a couple pieces of news here. Israel Adesanya spoke to TMZ. He was talking a lot of smack about John Jones, basically told Jones to shut up and stop talking about him because right now his idea is to fight at 185 pounds, defend his belt, and then eventually move to 205, just not yet. So he doesn't want John Jones talking about him unless he wants to move down to 185, which obviously won't be happening. He says that he wants to fight Yoel Romero. He's told the UFC he wants to fight him, but the UFC itself is the one saying they don't want the fight because apparently, according to Adesanya, the UFC told him that fight doesn't sell pay-per-views, and that's why they have some other ideas for him. So we'll see what happens with him, but maybe they'll eventually get their way and get the Romero fight. Tyson Fury, he's been training MMA with Darren Till. When I heard that he wanted to, consider it, I thought it was a joke, but it looks like he is training some MMA with Darren Till, so good for him. Working on some striking, I'm assuming working on his ground. I mean, the guy's only 31. He's obviously one of the best boxers in the world. So if he could come to MMA and work on his grappling, he could be dangerous at the heavyweight division. I mean, Greg Hardy's already arguably a top 15 guy with 1 year of training. So why couldn't Tyson Fury do the same thing? It's interesting for sure. I don't know if he'd be fighting for a belt or anything like that. Like Steven Mios is just calling him out saying, be careful what you wish for. The guy's a huge name, obviously, but hey, you know what? If he wants to come try his hand in the octagon, why not? I mean, we've seen guys like James Toney do in the past. Why couldn't Tyson Fury? I know James Toney obviously had a bad result against Randy Couture, but hey, Tyson Fury is 31. And if he can train some wrestling and stuff the next 3 years, he could be decent. Who never know? Last things to talk about here. Just one other fight announcement here for Bellator 235. This is the Salute to the Troops card, Barnett versus Marks main event. I talked about that last week. I like Josh Barnett in that fight. The other fight in the card is Erik Perez making his Bellator debut as Toby Misech. So Erik Perez is a guy that UFC cut. Remember, you guys remember him. He had a really big potential, I think, in the UFC. He went overall 6-2 in the UFC, 7-2. Oh my gosh, 7-2. And he was cut for some reason. I'm not sure why he was cut. I don't think any of us really know. He had some, decent performances for sure. Felipe Orantes, Francisco Rivera. He also had the fastest knockout in bantamweight history against Ken Stone. So he had that knockout win, but he, I think he had a contract dispute and they just let him go. He went to Combat. He's picked up 2 wins and now signs with Bellator. I think this guy still has a lot of potential. He's still young. He's only 29. So Gallito is a guy that I think was cut too soon. The UFCs make some weird cuts sometimes, like Curtis Bellinger. And Erik Perez, another one. Again, I think it was a contract issue with him, but still, 7-2 record was released. So that's kind of weird. He takes on Toby Misech, who's being brought in here to lose, let's be honest. So I expect Erik Perez to be a massive favorite in that fight. All right, guys, that's it for today's show. I appreciate you as always tuning into the podcast. You can check me out on Twitter at MMAdammartin, and this podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to our YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. The podcast is available on iTunes. I noticed that the subscriptions are going up, so I appreciate that, guys. Really appreciate it. All the support is welcomed. I love doing the show. Do it every day, Monday to Friday. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning, so I appreciate all the support you guys give me. Also, check out the podcast at Spotify and Anchor as well, and SoundCloud. So definitely some spots to listen to the podcast. You can also check me out at bjpenn.com and mmarings.net. Got a lot of articles up right now. So, guys, once again, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'll be back tomorrow for the Tuesday edition of the show with Cole Shelton breaking down UFC Sao Paulo, which takes place this weekend, as well as the Bellator card in Israel. Guys, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Bye.